To make self-preservation and self-protection the first law of existence is about as scientific as making suicide the first law of existence. A nightingale singing at the top of his voice is neither hiding himself, nor preserving himself, nor propagating his species. Mysticism is something that you understand beyond your senses. There are 5 senses, and you require all the senses, and also you should go beyond those senses to understand such thing. Hello students, I am Anil, Assistant Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. In this session, we are going to look at a poem titled Self-Protection by D.H. Lawrence for the students of BCA first semester. Before we get into the poem, Self-Protection, let us know about D.H. Lawrence. D.H. Lawrence was an English author of novels, short stories, poems, plays, essays, travel books, and letters. His novels, Sons and Lovers, The Rainbow, and The Woman in Love made him one of the most influential English writers of the 20th century. He is known for some of the controversial things like Sons and Lover. It was a success in the beginning, but there was much controversy with his type of writing. So here he wrote this poem, Self-Protection. So what is self-protection? Let us look at the poetry, Self-Protection. The poem starts like this. When science starts to be interpretive, it is more unscientific even than mysticism. To make self-preservation and self-protection the first law of existence is about as scientific as making suicide the first law of existence, and amounts to very much the same thing. A nightingale singing at the top of his voice is neither hiding himself, nor preserving himself, nor propagating his species. He is giving himself away in every sense of the word, and obviously it is the culminating point of his existence. A tiger is striped and golden for his own glory. He would certainly be much more invisible if he were grey-green, and I don't suppose the ichthyosaurus sparkled like hummingbird. No doubt he was khaki-colored with muddy protective coloration. So why didn't he survive? As a matter of fact, the only creatures that seem to survive are those that give themselves away in flash and sparkle and gay flicker of joyful life. Those that go glittering abroad with a bit of splendor. So reading this poetry, what did you understand? What is there in this poetry? When science starts to be interpretive, when you start explaining science and the methods involved in science, it is more unscientific even than mysticism. What is mysticism? Mysticism is something that you understand beyond your senses. There are 5 senses, and you require all the senses, and also you should go beyond those senses to understand such thing. And science would be like that if you start to interpret science. It is an unscientific work. This is what D.H. Lawrence says. To make self-preservation and self-protection the first law of existence. As we all know, the first law of existence is self-preservation. An organism, any species, has to preserve itself. It has to give rise to its progeny. It will continue like that in order to preserve its species, its identity. That is self-protection and self-preservation. So if you make that the first law of existence, is about as scientific as making suicide the first law of existence. So somebody who does not want to live, somebody who tries to make its presence, the struggle which they have, it is as good as making suicide the first law of existence. That means the effort that requires to preserve oneself is such, and amounts to very much the same thing. So he compares self-preservation, self-protection, and suicide as the same thing. That means they all require effort. A nightingale singing at the top of his voice is neither hiding himself, nor preserving himself, nor propagating his species. So he takes an example of a nightingale, which sings, which makes sounds, and it captures the attention of the listeners. So when it does, we notice that there is species like nightingale, which sings, which is melodious to hear. So here he says, it sings at the top of his voice. So why is it doing? It is neither hiding himself. So if it wanted to hide itself, it would not sing very melodiously and loudly. It is not hiding himself, nor preserving himself, or nor propagating his species. It is singing to the full of its life. He is giving himself away in every sense of the word. That means it is really living the moment, enjoying the moment, and it is singing very loudly. And obviously, it is the culminating point of his existence. So, the purpose of a nightingale is singing with all its heart. Therefore, we all know what nightingale is. Now he talks about tiger. A tiger is stripped and golden for his own glory. When you look at a tiger, it's very majestic. He would certainly be much more invisible if he were grey-green. So you should understand camouflage. What is camouflage? Blending with the background of nature. If tiger was like that, then we would never notice a tiger. But it is completely different. It is golden, it is stripped, and I don't suppose the ichthyosaurus sparkled like the hummingbird. Now he talks about a sea creature, ichthyosaurus, which has gone extinct, and he is expressing this idea. It camouflaged itself, but why didn't it survive? No doubt he was khaki colored. That ichthyosaurus was khaki colored with muddy protective coloration. So why didn't he survive? Today we don't find those kind of fish. So what happened to that? Why did it not preserve its own self? Preserving in war, there are two types of preserving oneself. Protect themselves, self-protection. He compares life is like war, and animals are trying to protect themselves. In that scenario, one has to blend with the background in order to escape from enemy fire. So here nobody is attacking them. They had this gift of camouflaging themselves. But why did they not survive? That is the question D.H. Lawrence asks. As a matter of fact, the only creatures that seem to survive are those that give themselves away in flash and sparkle and gay flicker of joyful life. These lines are very important from D.H. Lawrence's point of view. So here he says, as a matter of fact, so what is the truth? The truth is this: the only creatures that seem to survive are those that give themselves away in flash and sparkle and happy flicker of joyful life. So those who live the moment, those who show their talent, those who mark their presence are the only people or only creatures that seem to survive, that seem to protect themselves. Those that go glittering abroad with a bit of splendor. So all these creatures, whether it is animals or human beings, if they show their talent, if they are happy, if they live their moment, then only they will mark their presence and they will preserve their identity for future forever. So when you summarize the entire poetry, it is like this. In this poem, Self-Protection, D.H. Lawrence poses a question. Is the best self-protection hiding who you are or being who you are? So this is the question which becomes very important to answer. He goes on to point out that only the creatures wholly and colorfully which show themselves have survived the centuries. Those which have wholly and colorfully expressed themselves, they have survived the centuries. The ones who have been camouflaged have perished. Those who tried to hide themselves, they have perished. So here, he is applying the concept of self-protection and self-preservation for human beings, for one's identity. So he takes the example of nature and he tries to tell people that one has to show what one has and mark his or her presence in order to protect one's identity for eternity. I hope you understood the poetry, summary of the poetry. We shall meet in the next class. Thank you.